What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I would like to welcome you all to another edition of Wayne's Perspective, where we operate in integrity, discipline, decency, and respect. On this Saturday afternoon, one day before Easter Sunday, I hope everyone is doing okay, taking every day one day at a time and just living life the best way you know how. Um, the time is moving by so fast. I can't believe that we're basically staring at April 2024. It's almost as if January, February, and March just came and went. And here we are, we're standing another month. So another new month. So I just hope everyone is doing okay. And like I said, taking every day one day at a time. So without further delay, today's topic is going to be a rather interesting one. It is going to be politically motivated, for the lack of a better word. It's going to be the first of a four-part series regarding Donald Trump. That guy, as if that guy doesn't get enough press as it is, here we go. Or should I say, here I go with a four-part series that's going to focus on him and his basic effect on this country. So before I get to part one, I just want to talk briefly about my history with this guy, quote unquote history. So I first became aware of Donald Trump, I want to say in the late 1990s. And of course, as you all know who have checked out my introduction, I'm a longtime wrestling fan. So I became familiar with Donald Trump basically by way of WrestleMania 4 and WrestleMania 5. As you all know, if you're a longtime wrestling fan such as myself, WrestleManias 4 and 5 were done back to back, of course, and they were done at the Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino. Now there basically have been a lot of reports over the years that the building wasn't the best. I remember Hulk Hogan calling it a, what did he say? I think he said the building was trash or something like that. And it didn't have anything to do with Donald Trump per se, but he just wasn't a fan of the building. I mean, I had no problems with it. And of course, WrestleMania 4 and WrestleMania 5, they hold strong nostalgic vibes with me, especially WrestleMania 5. But that's when I first became aware of who Donald Trump was. And then he was also in the audience at WrestleMania 7. Mean Gene Okerlund, rest in peace to him. They did a little interview before one of the matches came. I believe it was before the Earthquake versus Greg Valentine match, I think. I haven't watched that show in quite some time. And, they did a brief little interview. And of course, Donald Trump, he much younger at the time. And, Mean Gene mentioned something about him hosting WrestleMania 4 and 5. And then Trump, even if he didn't mean to, he basically lied right there and said, I look forward to doing something. And I'm paraphrasing. I'm looking forward to doing something with the WWF again very, very soon. Well, as it turns out, very, very soon was what? 2007 when they did the Battle of the Billionaires against Mr. McMahon with Umaga, rest in peace to him, on Vince's side and Bobby Lashley on Donald Trump's side. But, that's another story for that. So, that's when I became further um, basically became more aware of who he was. And of course, most of us remember his appearance on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Good episode. I mean, he did his thing. I'll give him that. But I mean, he didn't have to do much. He did his role well. And the scene where Ashley was pretty much telling, Ashley came in the cut. She was like, I just want to say, thank you for ruining my life. And then when Will tried to console her, his comment after the fact, I think it was Marlon Maples who was with him. Trump's comment after the fact, he was, well, everyone likes to blame me for everything. Well, that's for damn sure. But I digress. But anyway, so I remember that. And then of course, I never watched The Apprentice, never have, never will. I have no interest in watching that show. And like I said earlier, I know him from the things that he did with WWE, the Battle of the Billionaires. There was a time where he bought Raw, I think for a night or something like that. It escapes me, but he was involved with the WWE for a time. And then, from there, that's when things started to change. He was, looking to get involved into politics and things like that. Um, I'll touch on that a little bit more probably on the second part, but this part is mainly going to focus on his supporters, or as I call them, worshipers. But just to be a little bit PC, quote unquote, here, I'm just going to refer to them as his supporters for this particular post. So yeah, so that's my history with Donald Trump. And I'll talk a, a little bit more about the extended history in the second part. Okay. So the supporters, the worshipers, bless their hearts. Bless their hearts. From the moment he came down that escalator in 2015 and basically all the way up to present day, those supporters, they showed their natural asses on account of this guy. I don't think I've ever seen so much caping in my life. Um, I know I know you talk about supporting someone, but it goes far beyond support. In this case, I would say worship. That's why I call them worshipers, because that's exactly what they do. As if this guy can do no wrong, say no wrong, speak no evil, see no evil, hear no evil. But okay, whatever. So today's topic, like I said, is going to focus on the supporters, but the one aspect of this is basically going to be courtesy of this particular article that I'm going to read in its entirety. And this is going to allow you to get the full context of everything. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Okay. So this article is from 2020 and it is relevant today, almost 4 years after the fact. So credit to Mike Levine and ABC News for this. It's a real lengthy article, but like I said, I'm going to read it in its entirety. I'm not sure if anyone has seen it, but rest assured, I've read it a couple of times and it speaks volumes. It may not be as prevalent in present day 2024, but it's still relevant. And as you look at the title, No Blame, ABC News finds 54 cases invoking Trump in connection with violence, threats, alleged assaults. So, we're going to go through this. And like I said, this particular post is going to speak volumes as to the lengths that his supporters went through for a certain period of time. And like I said, it speaks volumes on everything. And if this doesn't say it all, I don't know what else it is to say. So we're going to get into it. All right. So President, or in this case, I said, then President Donald Trump insists he deserves no blame for divisions in America. Okay. Well, here's what we can say. We can say with certainty that no, Donald Trump didn't create racism or anything like that, but he certainly, threw a match into a box of gasoline or a can of gasoline and it just sparked from there, and of course, his actions and the things that he said, it only added to everything, only added to it. It made things worse. So we're going to get into this particular article here. Okay. All right. So President Donald Trump has repeatedly distanced himself from acts of violence in communities across America, dismissing critics who point to his rhetoric as a potential source of inspiration. Of inspiration or comfort for anyone acting on even long-held beliefs of bigotry and hate. I think my rhetoric brings people together. Yeah, right. He said last year, 4 days after a 21-year, check this out. 4 days after a 21-year-old allegedly posted an anti-immigrant screed online and then allegedly opened fire at a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, killing 22 and injuring dozens of others. I remember that. But a nationwide review conducted by ABC has identified at least 54 criminal cases where Trump was invoked in direct connection with violent acts, threats of violence, or allegations of assault. And at the end of this post, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have a major point that I'm going to hit at. So just stay tuned for that. Okay. After a Latino gas station attendant in Gainesville, Florida, was suddenly punched in the head by a white man, the victim could be heard on surveillance camera recounting the attacker's own words. He said, "This is for Trump." Charges were filed, but the victim stopped pursuing them. When police questioned a Washington state man about his threats to kill a local Syrian-born man, the suspect told police he wanted the victim to, quote, "get out of my country," adding, "that's why I like Trump." Interesting. For the wrong reasons. Reviewing police reports and court records, ABC News found that in at least 12 cases, perpetrators held Trump in the midst or immediate aftermath of physically assaulting innocent victims. In another 18 cases, perpetrators cheered or defended Trump while taunting or threatening others. And And in another 10 cases, Trump and his rhetoric was cited in court to explain the defendant's violent or threatening behavior. When three Kansas men were on trial for plotting to bomb a largely Muslim apartment complex in Garden City, Kansas, one of their lawyers told the jury that the men, excuse me, were concerned about what now President Trump had to say about the concept of Islamic terrorism. Another lawyer insisted Trump had become, quote, the voice of a lost and ignored white working class set of voters, and Trump's rhetoric meant someone who will often be at a 7 during a normal day might go to 11. Okay, let me stop right there for a second. You see, this is when gaslighting goes wrong, as if there's a right way to gaslight somebody, but this is where gaslighting goes wrong. Okay. Okay. The voice of a lost and ignored white working class set of voters. So apparently when Obama came into the office, the rest of the country was ignored but us, right? Is that what we're saying here? When that's totally not the case. So like I said, this is when gaslighting goes wrong. This is when everything you can imagine goes wrong. It's the whole thing of grievance and everything like that. And of course, when you got people that's highly emotional, or should I say highly emotional, and have a lot of grievances and everything related, this is the result of it, And when you get people to act in such a way, anything's possible, which is sad. So continuing on, 13 cases identified by ABC News involve violent or threatening acts perpetrated in defiance of Trump, with many of them targeting Trump's allies in Congress. But the vast majority of the cases, 41 of the 54, reflect someone echoing presidential rhetoric, not protesting it. That's important. I'll read that again. But the vast majority of the cases, 41 of the 54, reflect someone echoing presidential rhetoric, not protesting it. ABC News could not find a single criminal case filed in federal or state court where an act of violence or threat was made in the name of President Barack Obama or President George W. Bush. That's important as well. And that a small portion of that is going to come into play when I end this post. But that's important as well. Just think about it. The 54 cases identified by ABC News are remarkable in that a link to the president is captured in court documents and police statements under the penalty of perjury or contempt. These links are not speculative. Oh, okay. I think I butchered that a little bit. Speculative. Let me move on. They are documented in official records, and in the majority of cases by ABC News, it was perpetrators themselves who invoked the president in connection with their case, not anyone else. Speculative. There it is. These links are not speculative. I got it, ladies and gentlemen. That rarely happens, but I got it. Okay. The perpetrators and suspects identified in the 54 cases are mostly white men, as young as teenagers and as old as 75, while the victims largely represent an array of minority groups: African Americans, Latinos, Muslims, and gay men. That's important as well. Federal law enforcement authorities have privately told ABC News they worried that although Trump has offered public denunciations of violence, his statements have been inconsistent, no surprise, and Trump style could inspire violent-prone individuals to take action against minorities or others they perceive to be against the president's agenda. Any public figure could have the effect of inspiring people, FBI Director Chris Wray told a Senate panel last year. But remember that the people who commit hate-fueled violence are not logical, rational people. That's true, no matter who they support. While asserting that fake media coverage is exacerbating divisions in the country, Trump has noted that a fan of Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders opened fire on Republican lawmakers playing baseball in a Washington suburb 2 years ago. Nobody puts Bernie Sanders in the headline with the maniac, Trump said last year. And last year, Trump similarly insisted that the man who fatally shot 9 people in Dayton, Ohio 3 days earlier supported Sanders and upper liberal causes. Let me stop right there. Okay. Key differences here. Even if somebody did this for a liberal cause or a Democratic cause, that doesn't make it right. No matter who does it, it's not right. And second of all, Bernie Sanders denounced that shooter not too long after it happened. I mean, hello, Bernie Sanders wasn't, supporting this guy or anything like that. He denounced that, and so did everyone else. That was a sad thing that happened, and yes, Steve Scalise, no, I probably wouldn't agree with him on much, but nobody wanted to see him harmed or killed. That guy has a family too. So again, no matter who does it or which side perpetrated, that doesn't make it right. But that's common sense. But anyway, we just getting started, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so but there's no indication of either of those shooters mentioned. Hold on. But there's no indication either of those shooters mentioned Sanders while launching their attacks, and no charges were ever filed because they were both fatally shot during their assaults. In addition, a president inhabits a unique position in America with access to a special bully pulpit. On Twitter, at the time, Trump currently has 80.7 million followers, nearly 7 times the number of Sanders followers. In identifying the 54 Trump related cases, ABC News excluded incidents of vandalism. ABC News also excluded many cases of violence, from attacks on anti Trump protesters at Trump rallies to certain assaults on people wearing Make America Great Again hats that did not establish explicit ties to Trump in court records or police reports. Similarly, being a documented Trump supporter who committed an assault, even at a Trump related location, would not be enough to be included if official records did not document a specific connection to Trump. ABC News found several cases where pro-Trump defendants were charged with targeting minorities, or where speculation online suggested the defendants were motivated by Trump. But in those cases, ABC News found no police records, court proceedings, or other direct evidence present a definitive link to the president. In many cases of assault or threat, charges are never filed, perpetrators are never identified, or the incident is never even reported to authorities. And most criminal acts committed by Trump supporters or his detractors have nothing to do with the president. But in 54 cases, court records and police reports indicated some sort of link. Nevertheless, Trump has said he deserves no blame for what he called the hatred seemingly coursing through parts of the country. He told reporters that he's committed to doing everything in his power to not let political violence take root in America. Well, we saw how that turned out, didn't we? And he deserves no blame. Well, of course, that is the case when you talk about a man who is not only trying to evade accountability now, but he's never taken accountability a day in his life. But I digress. The White House did not respond to a request seeking comment for this report. Of course they did. Okay. So here we are to the main event, quote unquote. Here are the 54 cases identified by ABC News. Check this out. Look at this. Look at him. Stephen Leader. Look at him. You can just look at him and tell he don't like black people or any other race other than his own. But anyway, August 19th, 2015, in Boston, after he and his brother beat a sleeping homeless man of Mexican descent with a metal pole, Stephen Leader, 30, told police, quote, "Donald Trump was right. All these illegals need to be deported." The victim, however, was not in the United States illegally. The brothers, who are white, ultimately pleaded guilty to several assault-related charges and were each sentenced to at least 2 years in prison. Okay. First question. What did this homeless man do to you? Or what did any person of Mexican descent do to you? That's the question. And I think I already know the answer. Moving on. Shout out to Messing with Sean. December 5th, 2015. After Penn State University student Nicholas Tavella, 19, was charged with ethnic intimidation and other crimes for threatening to put a bullet in a young Indian man on campus, his attorney argued in court that Tavella was just motivated by a love of country, not hate. Whatever. Donald Trump is running for president of the United States, saying that we've got to check people out more closely. Tavella's attorney argued in his defense. Tavella, who is white, ultimately pleaded guilty to ethnic intimidation and was sentenced to up to 2 years in prison. Look at that. April 28th, 2016, when FBI agents arrested 61-year-old John Martin Ruse in White City, Oregon, for threatening federal officials, including then President Barack Obama. They found several pipe bombs and guns in his home. In the 3 months before his arrest, Ruse posted at least 34 messages to Twitter about Trump, repeatedly threatening African Americans, Muslims, Mexican immigrants, and the liberal media. In the court documents, prosecutors noted that the avowed Trump supporter posted this threatening message to Facebook a month earlier. Check this out. The establishment is trying to steal the election from Trump. Obama is already on a kill list. Your name can be there too. Ruse, who is white, has since pleaded guilty to possessing an unregistered explosive device and posting internet threats against federal officials. He was sentenced to more than 5 years in prison. Okay, question. What did Obama do to you? I'm serious. And what you need pipe bombs for? Like, what else are you going to do with them? You don't have them for pleasure or for visual purposes. So what you need pipe bombs for? And the establishment, and see, let me stop for a minute. The establishment. It's amazing that even today you would still have some people railing about the establishment. Trump is part of the establishment. I mean, come on. Anyway, June 3rd, 2016, after 54-year-old Henry Slapnick attacked his African-American neighbors with a knife in Cleveland, he told police, quote unquote, Donald Trump will fix them because they are scared of Donald Trump, according to police reports. Slapnick, who is white, ultimately pleaded guilty to ethnic intimidation and other charges. It's unclear what sentence he received. August 16th, 2016, in Olympia, Washington, 32-year-old Daniel Rowe attacked a white woman and a black man with a knife after seeing them kiss on a popular street. When police arrived on the scene, Rowe professed to being a white supremacist and said he planned on heading down to the next Donald Trump rally and stumping out more of the Black Lives Matter group, according to court documents filed in the case. Rowe, who is white, ultimately pleaded guilty to charges of assault and malicious harassment, and he was sentenced to more than 4 years in prison. You see a common theme here? All these cats getting arrested for doing this dumb shit. Excuse my French. You see it? Boy, I tell you. Oh, look at this cat. Yeah, that's Mr. Slapnick, everybody. Okay. September 1st, 2016, the then chief of the Bordentown, New Jersey, Police Department, Frank Nussera, allegedly assaulted an African-American teenager who was handcuffed. Federal prosecutors said the attack was part of Nussera's intense racial animus, knowing in federal court that within hours of the assault, Nussera was secretly recorded saying, Donald Trump is the last hope for white people. The 60-year-old Nussera, who is white, another common theme here, was indicted by a federal grand jury on 3 charges, including committing a federal hate crime and lying to the FBI about the alleged assault. He was convicted of lying to the FBI, but a jury deadlocked on the other charges, so Nussera is now awaiting the second trial. He has pleaded not guilty. September 2016, after 40-year-old Mark Fagan of Los Angeles was arrested for posting anti-Muslim and allegedly threatening statements to a mosque Facebook page. His attorney argued in court that the comments were protected by the First Amendment because Fagan was using similar language and expressing similar views to campaign statements from then candidate Donald Trump. Knowing that this client supported Donald Trump, attorney Caleb Mason added that Mr. Fagan's comments were directed toward a pressing issue of public concern that was a central theme of the Trump campaign and the 2016 election generally, the Islamic roots of many international and U.S. terrorist acts. Fagan, who is white, ultimately pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge of sending harassing communications electronically. He was sentenced to probation. October 10th, 2016. Police in Albany, New York arrested a 55-year-old Tar Warkin for threatening an African-American woman at a local grocery store because of her race, according to a report. Warnkin allegedly told the victim, Trump is going to win, and if you don't like it, I'm going to beat your ass, you N-word. The police report said. He ultimately pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge in the case and completed a local restorative justice program, allowing the charges against him to be dismissed, according to the district attorney's office. October 13th, 2016. After the FBI arrested 3 white Kansas men for plotting to bomb an apartment complex in Garden City, Kansas, where many Somali immigrants live, one of the men's attorneys insisted to a federal judge that the plot was self-defensive because, because the 3 men believed that if Donald Trump won the election, President Obama would not recognize the validity of those results, that he would declare martial law, and that at that point, militias all over the country would have to step in. Where the hell did he get this information? And secondly, what would Obama gain from not recognizing the validity of the results? I mean, what would Obama gain from that? Nothing. It's not going to help him. Boy, I tell you, bless their hearts. Then, after a federal grand jury convicted 47-year-old Patrick Stein and the 2 other men of conspiracy-related charges, Stein's attorney argued for a lighter sentence based on the backdrop of Stein's actions. Trump had become the voice of a lost and ignored white working class set of voters like Stein, blah, blah, blah. And the climate at the time could propel someone like Stein to go to 11, attorney Jim Pratt said in court. Stein and his 2 accomplices were each sentenced to at least 25 years in prison. November 3rd, 2016, in Tampa, Florida, David Howard threatened to burn down the house next to his simply because it was being purchased by a Muslim family who more likely didn't do a damn thing to him, according to the Justice Department. He later said under oath that while he harbored a years-long dislike for Muslims, the circumstances around the homestead were the match that lit the wick. He cited Trump's warnings about immigrants from majority Muslim countries. With the fact that the president wants these 6 countries vetted, everybody vetted before they come over, there's a concern about Muslims, Howard said. Howard, who is white, ultimately pleaded guilty to a federal civil rights violation, and the 59-year-old was sentenced to 8 months in prison. November 10th, 2016. A 23-year-old man from High Springs, Florida, allegedly assaulted an unsuspecting Hispanic man who was cleaning a parking lot outside of a local food store. He was suddenly struck in the back of the head, a police report said of the victim. The victim asked the suspect why he hit him, to which the suspect supplied, "This is for Donald Trump." What idiot and coward, but okay. The suspect then grabbed the victim by the jacket and proceeded to strike him several more times, according to the report. Surveillance video of the incident completely corroborated the victim's accounts of events, police said. The suspect was arrested on battery charges, but the case was dropped after the victim decided to not pursue the matter, police said. Efforts by ABC News to reach the victim for further explanation were not successful. Yeah, he should have been charged. November 12th, 2016. In Grand Rapids, Michigan, while attacking a cab driver from East Africa, 23-year-old Jacob Hotzlander shouted racial epithets and repeatedly yelled the word Trump, according to law enforcement officials. Hotzlander, who is white, ultimately pleaded guilty to a charge of ethnic intimidation and was sentenced to 30 days in jail. November 16th, 2016, police in San Antonio, Texas, arrested 32-year-old Dusty Paul Lacombe after he and a companion assaulted a black man in a convenience store. According to a police report, Lacombe stepped out of a vehicle and walked to the victim and stated he was a Trump supporter and swung at him several times. Jesus Christ. The victim was punched in the face several times, the police report said. When police arrived, Lacombe, who smelled strongly of alcohol, stated something about Trump and admitted to fighting with the victim, the report noted. Lacombe was charged with misdemeanor assault and ultimately received deferred adjudication, which is akin to probation. Lacombe ultimately pleaded no contest to the charge and was granted deferred adjudication with a $450 fine. January 3rd, 2017, in Chicago, 4 young African Americans, sisters Brittany and Tanisha Covington, Jordan Hill, and Tess Faye Cooper, tied up a white, mentally disabled man and assaulted him forcing him to recite the phrases F Donald Trump and F white people while they broadcast the attack online. Each of them ultimately pleaded guilty to committing a hate crime and other charges, and 3 of them were sentenced to several years in prison. I don't agree with that at all. See, again, it's not right when any side results in this behavior. January 25th, 2017, at JFK International Airport in New York, a female Delta employee wearing a hijab in accordance with her Muslim faith was physically and verbally attacked by 57-year-old Robin Rose of Worcester, Mass. Or Worcester, I think that's how it's pronounced. For no apparent reason, prosecutors said at the time. When the victim asked Brown what she did to him, he replied, "You did nothing but blank Islam, blank ISIS. Trump is here now. He will get rid of all of you." Rose ultimately pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge of menacing, and he was sentenced to probation. You see what I mean? February 19th, 2017. After 35-year-old Gerald Wallace called a mosque in Miami Gardens, Florida, and threatened to shoot all y'all, he told the FBI and police that he made the call because he got angry from a local TV news report about a terrorist act. At a rally in Florida the day before, Trump falsely claimed that Muslim refugees had just launched a terrorist attack in Sweden. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's another thing. You know, in addition to the gaslighting, all things related, they just believe anything. Unbelievable. Wallace's attorney, Katie Coleman, later tried to convince a federal judge that the threat to kill worshipers could be protected speech. Due to the very distinctly political climate at the time, there are courts considering President Trump's travel ban, and the president himself has made some very pointed statements about what he thinks about people of this descent, Coleman argued in court. Wallace, who was African-American, ultimately pleaded guilty to obstructing the free exercise of his victims' religious belief, and he was sentenced to 1 year in prison. February 23rd, 2017, Kevin Seymour and his partner Kevin Price were riding their bicycles in Key West, Florida. Wow, Florida keeps coming up, I tell you. When a man on a moped, 30-year-old Brandon Davis of North Carolina, hurled anti-gay slurs at them and intentionally ran into Seymour's bike, shouting, "You live in Trump country now," according to police reports and Davis's attorney. Davis ultimately pleaded guilty to a charge of battery, evidence, and prejudice, but in court, he expressed remorse and was sentenced to 4 years probation. May 3rd, 2017, in South Padre Island, Texas, 35-year-old Alexander Jennings Downing of Waterford, Connecticut, was captured on cell phone video, taunting and aggressively approaching a Muslim family, repeatedly shouting, "Donald Trump will stop you," and other Trump-related remarks. Police arrested Downing of Waterford, Connecticut, for public intoxication. It's unclear what came of the charge. May 11th, 2017, authorities arrested Steve Martin of Tucson, Arizona, after he left 3 threatening messages at the office Rep. Martha McSally, Republican, Arizona. In one message, he told McSally he was going to blow your brains out, and in another, he told her that her days are numbered. He later told FBI agents that he was venting frustrations with Congresswoman McSally's congressional votes in support of the President of the United States. According to charging documents, Martin's attorney, Walter Goncalves Jr., later told a judge that Martin had an alcohol problem and left the messages after becoming intoxicated and greatly upset by news that McSally agreed with decisions by President Trump. Martin, 58, has since pleaded guilty to 3 counts of retaliating against a federal official and was sentenced to more than 1 year in prison. It's not cool, man. All right, sorry about that. Okay. May 23rd, 2017, George Jarjour and his brother Sam Jarjour were getting gas at a station in Bellevue, Washington, when 56-year-old Kenneth Jarp started yelling at them to go back to your country, according to a police report. So Jarp then drove his truck toward the brothers, rolled down his window, and declared, "F you Muslims, I'll effing kill you," the police report said. When police officers interviewed Jarp the next day, according to the report, He became animated and his voice got louder as he started talking about how he hated these people, particularly Iranians, Indians, and Middle Easterners. And the report recounted, he said he supports Trump in keeping them out. A week later, Sajab threatened another man at a local business, yelling, "I hate foreigners," according to a police report. He was arrested days later. Sajab ultimately pleaded guilty to one count of malicious harassment and was sentenced to 6 months behind bars. October 22nd, 2017, a 44-year-old California man threatened to kill Representative Maxine Waters, Democrat, California, for her frequent criticism of Trump and her promise to take out the president. Anthony Scott Lloyd left a voicemail at the Congresswoman's Washington office declaring, "If you continue to make threats towards the president, you're going to wind up dead, Maxine, because we'll kill you." After pleading guilty to one count of threatening a U.S. official, Lloyd asked the judge for leniency, saying he suffered from addiction-inducing mental illness and became far too immersed in listening to polarizing political commentators and engaging in heated political debates online. They never want to take accountability. And even if this may be taking accountability, you can't blame that on making these kinds of threats. You just can't. His lawyer put it this way to the judge: "Mr. Lloyd was a voracious consumer of political news online, on television, and on radio that are commonly viewed as right-wing, unconditionally supportive of President Trump, and fiercely critical of anyone who opposed President Trump's policies." The judge sentenced Lloyd to 6 months of house arrest and 3 years probation. February 21st, 2018, a federal grand jury in Washington, D.C. indicted a former U.S. diplomat, William Patrick Serene, 60, of Arlington, Virginia, on several counts of threatening employees of the Arab American Institute. He had previously served nearly a year in prison for threats he made in emails and voicemails to the same organization in 2006, but soon after serving his time, he began emailing the organization again. See, they never learn. In January 2017, a week after Trump was inaugurated, Serene sent one email saying, "It's time for ethnic cleansing of Arabs in America. Elections have consequences. They damn sure do. President Trump will cleanse America of AAI President James Zogby and all Arab American terrorists." Within months, he began sending particularly charged rhetoric that constituted a true threat, and emails like the one from January 2017 reflect the type of language that was part and parcel of his threats. Prosecutors said in court documents. In May 2019, a federal jury convicted Serene of all 14 counts against him, including 7 hate crime charges and 7 interstate threat charges. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Crazy. March 1st, 2018, the FBI arrested 24-year-old Dana Frizzolo, interesting names here, ladies and gentlemen, of Beverly, Massachusetts, for sending envelopes with white powder to at least 5 politically charged locations around the country. One of those envelopes was addressed to Donald Trump Jr. in New York, and it included a typed letter stating, "You are an awful, awful person. I am surprised that your father lets you speak on TV." Trump Jr.'s then wife received and opened the letter. The FBI ultimately determined Frizzolo was responsible for a rash of threatening letters sent to various public servants since 2015. In 2016, Frizzolo sent white powder to Trump's family in what federal authorities called a bid to persuade Trump to drop out of the presidential race. Frizzolo then sent white powder to Trump Jr. in early 2018 because of the victim's connection with his father, federal authorities said. Frizzolo ultimately pleaded guilty to 13 federal counts of mailing a threat. He was sentenced to 5 years probation, including 1 year of home confinement, even after prosecutors acknowledged there were unique consequences concerning Mr. Frizzolo's mental and emotional conditions, as they said in court documents. And again, when no matter whose side gets it, it's not right. It's not cool to send envelopes with white powder to anybody. It's not cool when anybody does it. That's all I'm saying. April 6, 2018, the FBI arrested 38-year-old Christopher Michael McGowan of Roanoke, Virginia, my state, for allegedly posting a series of Twitter threats against Rep. Bob Goodlatte, Republican, Virginia, over several months. In one posting in December 2017, McGowan wrote to Goodlatte, I'm sorry, I threatened to kill you if you help Trump violate the Constitution according to charging documents. In another alleged post, the self-described Army veteran wrote, if Trump tries to fire special counsel Robert Mueller, I will make an attempt to execute a citizen's arrest against Goodlatte, and I will kill him if he resists. In subsequent statements to police, he said he drinks too much, was hoping to get someone's attention over his concerns about the current status of our country, and did not actually intend to harm Goodlatte. Court documents recount a federal grand jury has indicted McGowan on one count of transmitting a threat over state lines, and it's unclear if he has entered a plea as he awaits trial. And again, it's not cool. It's not right. June 8th, 2018, federal authorities arrested Nicholas Bukowski of Anne Arundel County, Maryland, for threatening to kill Senator Bernie Sanders, Independent Vermont, and Senator Kamala Harris, Democrat, California. You wouldn't want to be caught off guard when I use my Second Amendment protected firearms to rid the world of you, Bukowski wrote to Sanders via Instagram on March 24th, 2018. 2 minutes later, he wrote to Harris saying he will make sure you and your radical lefty friends never get back in power because you won't make it to see that day. At a mental treatment facility shortly after his arrest, no wonder. He said he was watching the news and social media, which made him want to send threats. He stated that he was frustrated with liberals and he is very supportive of the current president. Court documents signed by Bukowski recount. Other court documents describe Bukowski's criminal past unrelated to politics, including a series of arsons he committed in 2017 and early 2018, and an armed robbery he committed in January 2018. In the most recent case involving threats to lawmakers, he ultimately pleaded guilty to one count of transmitting interstate threats and was sentenced to 6 months in prison. July 6, 2018, Mon Astroff, 75, approached a volunteer at the campaign office of Rep. Lee Zeldin, Republican, New York, in Suffolk County, New York, and stated he was going to kill supporters of U.S. Congressman Lee Zeldin and President Donald Trump, according to charging documents. Astroff was arrested and ultimately pleaded guilty to reckless endangerment. He was sentenced to 1 year probation. August 2018, after the Boston Globe called on news outlets around the country to resist what it called Trump's assault on journalism, the Boston Globe received more than a dozen threatening phone calls. You are the enemy of the people, the alleged caller, 68-year-old Robert Chain of Encino, California, told a Boston Globe employee on August 22nd. As long as you keep attacking the president, the duly elected president of the United States, I will continue to threaten, harass, and annoy the Boston Globe. A week later, authorities arrested Chain on threat-related charges. After a hearing in his case, he told reporters America was saved when Donald J. Trump was elected president. Chain has pleaded, some may beg to differ. Then, of course, Chain has pleaded guilty to 7 threat-related charges, and he is awaiting sentencing. October 4th, 2018, the Polk County Sheriff's Office in Florida arrested 53-year-old James Patrick of Winter Haven, Florida, back to Florida, for allegedly threatening to kill Democratic office holders, members of their families, and members of both local and federal law enforcement agencies, according to a police report. In messages posted online, Patrick detailed a plan for his attacks, which he said he would launch if then nominee Brett Kavanaugh was not confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. The police report said. Seeking Patrick's release from jail after his arrest, Patrick's attorney, Terry Stewart, told a judge that her client's rantings were akin to comments from a certain high ranking official, Trump. The president had threatened the North Korean people to blow them all up. It was on Twitter, Stewart said, according to the Sarasota Herald Tribune. Patrick has been charged with making a written threat to kill or injure, and he has pleaded not guilty. His trial is pending. And I mean, if if Brett Kavanaugh didn't get confirmed to the Supreme Court, what you was gonna do? And what does him being on the Supreme Court? How does his appointment to the Supreme Court have any bearing on this guy's life? Somebody explain that to me. Late October 2018, over the course of a week, Florida Mayor Caesar Sayak allegedly mailed at least 15 potential bombs to prominent critics of Trump and members of the media. Sayak had been living in a van plastered with pro-Trump stickers, and he had posted several pro-Trump messages on social media. Federal prosecutors have accused him of domestic terrorism, and Sayak has since pleaded guilty to 65 counts, including use of a weapon of mass destruction. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. We believe the president's rhetoric contributed to Mr. Sayak's behavior, his attorney told the judge at sentencing. Yeah, anybody, I mean, we can talk, we can have a discussion about someone living in a van, but when you have that many stickers on it, yeah, that says a lot. October 21st, 2018, while Bruce M. Alexander of Tampa, Florida, was flying on a Southwest Airlines flight from Houston, Texas to Albuquerque, New Mexico, he assaulted a woman by reaching around the seat in front of him and offensively touching her, he acknowledged in court documents. When federal authorities then arrested him, he stated that the president of the United States says it's okay to grab women by their private parts, an FBI agent wrote in court documents. Sick. Alexander ultimately pleaded guilty to a federal misdemeanor count of simple assault and was sentenced 2 days behind bars. Hell, 2 days was too short. And you see what I mean? It's okay to grab women by their private parts. Who else they heard that from? Boy, I tell you, bless their hearts. November 3rd, 2018, police in Tucson, Arizona arrested 42-year-old Daniel Brito of Rockville, Maryland on a robbery charge after he allegedly stole a Tucson man's Make America Great Again hat and punched the victim several times. When a police officer responded to the scene, Brito told the officer, I saw this guy with the Trump hat walk by and think about, you know what, F him, according to a police report. Brito later told two other officers that he believed the victim was a neo-Nazi Jew hater because the victim supported Trump, another police report said. December 4th, 2018, Michael Brogan, 51 of Brooklyn, New York, left a voicemail at an unidentified U.S. Senator's office in Washington insisting, I'm going to put a bullet in you. You and your constant lambasting of President Trump. Oh, reproductive rights, reproductive rights. He later told an FBI agent that before leaving the voicemail, he became very angry by an internet video of the senator, including the senator's criticism of the president of the United States, as well as the senator's views on reproductive rights. The threats were made to discourage the senator from criticizing the president, the Justice Department said in a later press release. Brogan has since pleaded guilty to one count of threatening a U.S. official, and he is awaiting sentencing. January 17th, 2019, Stephen Talbert of Syracuse, New York, was arrested by the U.S. Capitol Police for threatening to kill Representative Maxine Waters and for threatening to hang former President Barack Obama. What did these people do to you? What did they say about you? I digress. Talbert used overtly bigoted, hateful language in his threats, according to federal prosecutors. On July 20th, 2018, Talbert called the Congresswoman's Los Angeles office to say he would find her at public events and kill her and her entire staff. In a letter to the judge just days before Talbert's trial began, his defense attorney, Courtney McKeon, noted during that time period, Congresswoman Waters was embroiled in a public feud with the Trump administration. On June 25th, 2018, in response to the Congresswoman public statements, President Trump tweeted, Congresswoman Maxine was an extraordinarily low IQ person, has just called for harm to supporters of the Make America Great Again movement. Be careful what you wish for, Max. As McKeon insisted to the judge, this context is relevant to the case. A federal jury ultimately convicted Talbot on 3 federal charges, including retaliating against a federal official and making a threat over state lines. He was sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison. Oh, yeah, I remember this one. January 22nd, 2019, David, let's just call him David B. I'm not going to pronounce that, of Holiday, Florida. I think it's Boleo. David Boleo of Holiday, Florida, was arrested by the Pasco County Sheriff's Office for allegedly burglarizing an Iraqi family's home and going through their mailbox, according to a police report. After officers arrived at the home, Buleo made several statements of his dislike for people of Middle Eastern descent. The report said he also stated if he doesn't get rid of them, Trump will handle it. The police report noted that the day before, Buleo threw screws at a vehicle outside the family's office. On that day, Buleo allegedly told police, "We'll get rid of them one way or another." Buleo, 58, has since pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge of trespassing, and he was sentenced to 90 years in jail. 90 days in jail. February 15th, 2019, the FBI in Maryland arrested a Marine veteran and U.S. Coast Guard Lieutenant Christopher Paul Hassan, who they said was stockpiling weapons and espoused racist and anti-immigrant views for years as he sought to murder innocent civilians on a scale rarely seen in this country. In court documents, prosecutors said the 49-year-old domestic terrorist compiled a hit list of prominent Democrats. 2 months later, while seeking Hassan's release from jail before trial, his public defender, Elizabeth Oyer, told a federal judge, "This looks like the sort of list that our commander-in-chief might have compiled while watching Fox News in the morning. Is it legitimately frustrating that offensive language and ideology has now become part of our national vocabulary? Yes, it is very frustrating, but it is hard to differentiate it from the random musings of someone like Donald Trump, who uses similar epithets of his everyday language in tweets." Hassan ultimately pleaded guilty to federal weapons-related charges, and he was sentenced to more than 13 years in federal prison. And that was what this was the cause of that right there. Look at all that. Anyway, look at this cat. That's him, Christopher Paul Hassan. February 15th, 2019, police in Falmouth, Massachusetts arrested 41-year-old Rosanne Santos after she verbally assaulted a man for wearing a Make America Great Again hat in a Mexican restaurant and then violently pushed his head down, according to police reports. Apparently intoxicated, she stated that the victim was a mother effing for supporting Trump. One of the responding officers wrote. She also stated that he shouldn't be allowed in a Mexican restaurant with that. Santos was in the United States unlawfully, federal authorities said. Police arrested her on charges of simple assault and disorderly conduct. She has since admitted in local court that there are sufficient facts to warrant charges, and she has been placed on a form of probation. February 25th, 2019, an 18-year-old student at Edmond Santa Fe High School in Edmond, Oklahoma was captured on cell phone video confronting a younger classmate who was wearing a Make America Great Again hat and carrying a Trump flag, according to a press release from the local school system. The older student then proceeds to grab the flag and knock the head off of his classmate's head. The 18-year-old student was charged in local court with assault and battery, according to Edmond City Attorney Steve Murdoch. The student has since pleaded guilty and was placed on probation, Murdoch said. And again, I mean, I haven't seen too many Make America Great Again hats in my area over the years, but I've seen Trump banners, I've seen the Trump bumper stickers. I just look at it and keep it moving because acting on that is not going to help me. It's not going to benefit me. That's You got to be smart and you got to be disciplined about that. Let them wear the hat, let them fly the flag. I mean, if you don't support Trump and it's bothersome to you, I mean, that's one thing, but resulting in violence is not going to solve anything. It's not going to help anything. Just let them wear it and keep it moving. March 16th, 2019, Anthony Camello of Staten Island, New York, was taken into custody for allegedly killing Francesco Frankie Boy Cali, the reputed head of the infamous Gambino crime family. It marked the first mob boss murder in New York in 30 years. Law enforcement officials told ABC News the murder may have stemmed from Camello's romantic relationship with a Cali family member. Court documents since filed in state court by Camello's defense attorney, Robert Gottlieb, said Camello suffers from mental defect and was a believer in the conspiratorial fringe right-wing political group QAnon. In addition, Gottlieb wrote, beginning with the election of President Trump in November 2016, Anthony Camello's family began to notice changes to his personality. Mr. Camello became certain that he was enjoying the protection of President Trump himself and that he had the president's full support. Mr. Camello grew to believe that several well-known politicians and celebrities were actually members of the deep state and were actively trying to bring about the destruction of America. Camelo has been charged with 1 count of murder and 2 counts of criminal possession of a weapon. His trial is pending. He has pleaded not guilty. And that's him right there. April 5th, 2019, the FBI arrested a 55-year-old man from upstate New York for allegedly threatening to kill Representative Ilhan Omar, Democrat, Minnesota, one of the first 2 Muslim women elected to the U.S. Congress. She is an outspoken critic of Trump, and Trump has frequently launched public attacks against her and 3 other female lawmakers of color. Yeah, I remember that. They're called the Squad, and go back to where you came from and all that nonsense. Yeah, I remember. 2 weeks before his arrest, Patrick Carlinio Jr. allegedly called Omar's office in Washington, labeling the Congresswoman a terrorist and declaring, I'll pull a bullet in her effing skull." When an FBI agent then traced the call to Carlinio and interviewed him, Carlinio stated that he was a patriot, that he loves the president, and that he hates radical Muslims in our government. According to the FBI agent's summary of the interview, federal prosecutors charged Carlinio with threatening to assault and murder a United States official. He has since pleaded guilty to the charge and was sentenced to 1 year in prison. April 13th, 2019, 27-year-old Javon Crawford of Gaithersburg, Maryland, and 25-year-old Scott Roberson of Washington, D.C. assaulted and robbed a black man wearing a red Make America Great Again hat while walking through a suburban Maryland neighborhood. Before punching and kicking him, the 2 suspects harassed the victim about the hat and asked why he was wearing it. The victim then told them he has his own beliefs and views, which he's entitled to, according to charging documents filed after their arrest by Montgomery County, Maryland police. Crawford later received a text message noting that they jumped some Trump supporter, the charging document said. Crawford and Roberson has since pleaded guilty to assault charges. They were each sentenced to at least 1 year in prison. April 18th, 2019, the FBI arrested John Joseph Kless of Tamarack, Florida, for calling the Washington offices of 3 prominent Democrats and threatening to kill each of them. At his home, authorities found a loaded handgun in a backpack, an AR-15 rifle, the quote-unquote gun of choice, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. And later, pleading guilty to 1 charge of transmitting threats over state lines, Kless admitted that in a threatening voicemail targeting Representative Rashida Tlaib, Democrat, Michigan, he stated, "You won't effing tell Americans what to say, and you definitely don't tell our President Donald Trump what to say, but he can tell others what to say." Okay. Tlaib, a vocal critic of Trump, was scheduled to speak in Florida 4 days later. Kless was awaiting sentencing. In a letter to the federal judge, he has said he made a very big mistake, never meant to hurt anyone, and was way out of line with my language and attitude. Kless was sentenced to 1 year behind bars. And yes, Ms. Tlaib was one of another member of the squad along with Ilhan Omar. April 24th, 2019, the FBI arrested 30-year-old Matthew Haviland of North Kingstown, Rhode Island, for allegedly sending a series of violent and threatening emails to a college professor in Massachusetts who publicly expressed support for abortion rights and strongly criticized Trump. In one of 28 emails sent to the professor on March 10, 2019, Haviland allegedly called the professor pure evil and said all Democrats must be eradicated, insisting the country now has a president who's taken our country in a place of more freedom rather than less. In another email the same day, Haviland allegedly wrote the professor, "I will rip every limb from your body and I will kill every member of your family." According to court documents, Haviland's longtime friend later told the FBI that within the last year, Haviland's views regarding abortion and politics have become more extreme, at least in part because of the way the news media portrays President Trump. Haviland has since pleaded guilty to charges of cyber stalking and transmitting a threat in interstate commerce. He is awaiting sentencing. Very, very interesting, guys. June 5th, 2019, the FBI arrested a Utah man for allegedly calling the U.S. Capitol more than 2,000 times over several months and threatening to kill Democratic lawmakers whom he said were trying to destroy Trump's presidency. I'm going to take up my I'm going to take up my Second Amendment right and shoot you liberals in the head. 54-year-old Scott Brand Haven allegedly stated in one of the calls on April 18th, 2018, according to the charging documents. When an FBI agent later interviewed Haven, he explained the phone calls were made during periods of frustration with the way Democrats were treating President Trump. The charging document said, poor Trump. The FBI visit, however, did not stop Haven from making more threats, including on March 21st, 2019, he called an unidentified U.S. Senator's office to say that if Democrats refer to Trump as Hitler again, he would shoot them. And 2 days later, he called an unidentified congressman's office to say he was going to take the congressman out because he is trying to remove a duly elected president. A federal grand jury has since charged Haven with one count of transmitting a threat over state lines. Haven has since pleaded guilty to one count of transmitting a threat over state lines. He was sentenced to time served.